Here is something that will bother you for the rest of the day. The most famous mystery in the history of the ocean, ships vanishing, planes disappearing, thousands of people swallowed by the sea without a single trace, was almost entirely made up by one guy in 1974. And we can prove it. But here is the part nobody talks about. When scientists went in to debunk the myth, they found something underneath it. Something real. Something that does not have a clean explanation. Something sitting right now at the bottom of that triangle in the dark that the guy who made up the myth never even knew existed. That is what this video is about, not the legend, what is actually down there. Charles Berlitz, 1974. He publishes a book called The Bermuda Triangle. 5 million copies in year 1, translated into 30 languages. The claim: hundreds of ships and planes have vanished in this stretch of the Atlantic. Thousands dead, no explanation. Science has no answers. Insurance companies refuse to cover anything going through there. Sounds airtight, sounds like a cover-up, sounds like something they do not want you to know. 2 years later, a researcher named Lawrence David Kusch does something embarrassingly simple. He goes to a library. He takes every single case Berlitz lists and checks the original sources. Coast Guard reports, newspaper archives, weather records, Lloyd's shipping documents. What he finds is not complicated. It is just damning. Ship after ship that Berlitz calls vanished without trace in the triangle, sank somewhere else entirely. One went down off Portugal, one in the Pacific Ocean. Berlitz just moved them on the map. Several others sank in the middle of violent storms. Berlitz described the sea as calm. Kusch pulls the meteorological records. 7-force storm, 0 visibility, 10-meter waves. Some of the ships on Berlitz's list never disappeared at all. They made it to port. Berlitz never checked and did not care. Berlitz compared disappearance rates in the Bermuda Triangle to other ocean regions, as if the triangle were some quiet corner of the Atlantic. It is one of the most heavily trafficked shipping and aviation corridors on the planet. Thousands of vessels and hundreds of flights pass through it every single month. When Kusch adjusts for traffic volume, the triangle is statistically boring. No worse than the North Sea, no worse than the Gulf of Mexico. Just a busy stretch of water where occasionally things go wrong, like every other busy stretch of water. Kusch publishes his findings under the title The Bermuda Triangle Mystery. Solved. Berlitz responds by saying Kusch works for the government. The public takes that as proof of a conspiracy. The book keeps selling. This is how myths survive facts. You cannot kill them. When the evidence arrives, it gets absorbed into the legend. The debunking becomes part of the cover-up. And the guy who fabricated the whole thing gets to die a best-selling author. So Kusch was right. Berlitz lied. The statistics are normal. The mystery, in the way Berlitz sold it, does not exist. And then Kusch made his mistake. He concluded that because the myth was fake, there was nothing interesting here at all. Ordinary ocean, ordinary statistics. Move on. And for decades, that became the default position. Serious researchers avoided the topic entirely. Too much baggage. Too many associations with Atlantis hunters and alien theorists. If you studied the Bermuda Triangle, you were not taken seriously. While Kusch was in his library proving Berlitz wrong, other scientists were dropping equipment to the actual floor of the actual ocean in this region. And what they were pulling back up had nothing to do with Berlitz. It was geology. Quiet, technical, peer-reviewed geology. And it was deeply unsettling. The Bermuda Triangle covers roughly 1.5 million square kilometers of the Atlantic. Miami, Bermuda, Puerto Rico, those are the 3 points. The depth across the region is wildly inconsistent. Parts of it are relatively shallow, 200 meters or so. But then there is the Puerto Rico Trench, the deepest point in the entire Atlantic Ocean, 8,376 meters down. Put Everest on the floor of that trench, and its summit would still be half a kilometer underwater. For most of modern history, we basically had no idea what was down there. Deep sea exploration is brutally expensive and technically demanding. Serious submersible expeditions to this region did not begin until the 1980s. Proper seafloor mapping came even later, largely in the 2000s. When those maps came back, geologists went quiet. If you want to know what they saw, stick around. This is where the story stops being about Berlitz and starts being about something that is still not fully explained. And if you are finding this interesting so far, subscribe now. 1981. An American research vessel is doing routine seafloor sounding in the western section of the triangle. Unglamorous work mapping sedimentary rock for oil companies. At some point, the instruments flag something at around 700 meters depth. A formation that does not match the surrounding terrain. Angles too regular, surfaces too flat. The geologists on board write it off as instrument noise. Probably nothing. 2001. A Cuban company working with Canadian partners runs a survey off the western coast of Cuba. Researchers Paulina Zilitsky and Paul Weinsweig send down a remotely operated vehicle. At around 700 meters, they find what they describe as an urban landscape. Symmetrical stone blocks, right-angle formations, structures that do not look like anything that forms naturally. This hits the press immediately. Underwater city, Atlantis, Berlitz was right all along. Here is what actually happened. Other geologists look at the same sonar data and offer a straightforward explanation. Certain crystalline rocks, granite, basalt, fracture along flat plains under tectonic pressure. The result is blocks with sharp, regular angles. It looks engineered. It is not. But Zilitsky and Weinsweig push back. They say the symmetry they recorded is not typical of tectonic fracturing. They want to go back with divers. The Cuban government says, later, then later again. The project quietly dies. No definitive study of those structures has ever been conducted. Something on the seafloor caused genuine disagreement among credentialed geologists, and over 20 years later, nobody has gone back to settle it. The funding was never found. The political will was never there. It just sits there in the dark, unresolved. The thing that might actually explain some of the disappearances is something far less cinematic. You have probably never heard it discussed in the context of the Bermuda Triangle. Methane. Under the floor of the Bermuda Triangle sit some of the largest known methane hydrate deposits in the Atlantic Ocean. Methane hydrate is frozen methane, gas locked inside an ice crystal structure at high pressure and low temperature. Globally, more carbon may be stored in methane hydrates than in all known oil and gas reserves combined. Most of the time, this is stable. The gas stays frozen, locked in the rock, doing nothing. But sometimes it is not stable. A slight rise in water temperature, a shift in pressure, a small underwater earthquake. And when that happens, the hydrate breaks down. The methane does not seep out in gentle bubbles. It erupts, a massive, sudden release of gas from the sea floor. In 2003, Australian researchers publish a paper modeling what happens to a ship caught in one of these events. The water in the eruption zone becomes saturated with gas almost instantaneously. A vessel caught in that zone does not gradually take on water. It loses buoyancy so fast, it effectively drops. In seconds, there is no time to send a distress signal. The gas disperses the surface debris. There is no wreck to find. No trace, no explanation, no radio call. Sound familiar? Take a map of the confirmed methane hydrate deposits under the Bermuda Triangle region. Overlay it with the cleaned-up disappearance data, only cases that are genuinely documented. The correlation is not perfect, it is not a smoking gun, but it is there. This does not make the triangle statistically dangerous. The odds are extremely low. But in rare, specific circumstances, a ship in this region can vanish without a trace. Not because of aliens or time portals or ancient civilizations, because of frozen gas in the rock suddenly deciding to stop being frozen. And that is never in any of those 5 million copies of Berlitz's book. Because it is not dramatic enough. Because it does not have a villain. Because you cannot put it on a book cover with a glowing pyramid. Drop a like right now if you are still with me. It genuinely helps this video reach people. The Bermuda Triangle sits at the intersection of several major tectonic structures. The northern boundary of the Caribbean plate runs through here. There is a subduction zone where the North American plate is slowly sliding under the Caribbean plate. The Puerto Rico Trench is geologically young and still active. Hydrothermal vents have been recorded on its floor. Heat, mineral release, instability. In 2014, Norwegian scientists publish a study documenting giant craters on the floor of the Barents Sea. Up to half a kilometer wide. The cause, massive methane eruptions. After that paper lands, geologists start looking for similar structures elsewhere. They find them in the Atlantic, in the general region of the Triangle. Enormous unstable gas deposits, active tectonics, evidence of past eruption events. A trench nearly 8.5 kilometers deep that has barely been explored. And a magnetic anomaly that has been quietly messing with compasses since before anyone was keeping records. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the few places on Earth where magnetic north and true geographic north align almost exactly. This is called zero magnetic declination. As you cross into this zone, if you do not recalibrate your instruments, your navigational error accumulates silently. In the pre-GPS era, in bad weather, over long distances that drift could be catastrophic, Berlitz described compasses spinning randomly and instruments going haywire. That part was exaggerated or invented. But the underlying magnetic reality, real, measured, documented, none of this makes the Bermuda Triangle the supernatural death zone that sold 5 million books. But none of it is nothing either. Berlitz lied, established. Couchet proved it, established. The disappearance statistics are not anomalous when adjusted for traffic, established. So far, Couchet wins. But Couchet made the classic skeptic's error. He treated the demolition of the myth as the end of the inquiry. Tear down the lie and you are done. Nothing to investigate, move along. That is not how this works. Debunking a lie does not mean the question that inspired the lie was wrong. It means the answer someone gave was wrong. The question, what is actually happening in this part of the ocean, was always legitimate. It was just being answered by the wrong people, with the wrong methods for the wrong reasons. The right answer, in the 2020s, from actual science, looks like this. Beneath the Bermuda Triangle sit some of the Atlantic's largest methane hydrate deposits. Periodic eruption events occur, confirmed. Those events can sink vessels instantaneously, modeled and published in peer-reviewed literature. The Puerto Rico Trench is one of the least studied deep ocean structures on the planet. Anomalous formations at 700 meters depth have not received a definitive geological explanation. A real magnetic anomaly exists and affects navigation. The sediment record shows repeated disruption, evidence that whatever happens here has been happening for a long time. Not Atlantis, not aliens, not a government cover-up. Geology. Active, unstable, inadequately studied geology in one of the world's busiest maritime corridors. Berlitz filled the unknown with monsters because monsters sell. There is no villain, there is no ancient secret. Just a section of ocean floor that is geologically more active than most, that we understand less than we should. In the right conditions, it can swallow a ship without leaving anything on the surface to find. That is scarier than anything in the book, because it is not a story, it is a condition, it is ongoing. The last full scientific expedition to the floor of the Puerto Rico Trench happened in 2012. Over a decade ago, nobody has been back. We have more detailed maps of the surface of Mars than of the Puerto Rico Trench floor. That is not a poetic exaggeration. That is literally true. NASA has invested billions in mapping a planet 40 million miles away. The deepest point in the Atlantic, right next to major shipping lanes, has not had a dedicated research mission in over 10 years. And a big part of why is Charles Berlitz. Not because he was powerful, not because he suppressed anything, because he was so successful at turning this place into tabloid entertainment that serious scientists now reflexively distance themselves from it. Nobody wants to be the geologist studying the Bermuda Triangle. Nobody wants to be on the same shelf as the Atlantis book. So a genuine anomaly sits there untouched. Because the guy who lied about it first did such a thorough job that the truth got contaminated by contact. That is the actual legacy of the Bermuda Triangle myth, not wonder, not curiosity. A scientific blind spot in the middle of the Atlantic, maintained by embarrassment. In most parts of the ocean, the seafloor is covered by a thick, undisturbed layer of sediment. Geologists read that layer like a timeline. They can tell you what the climate was like 4,000 years ago. They can pinpoint ancient tsunamis and volcanic events. In several areas of the Bermuda Triangle, that sediment layer is either unusually thin or visibly disrupted. Those patches are consistent with areas where you would expect periodic disturbance, gas release events, underwater landslides. The 1929 Grand Banks landslide, a magnitude 7.2 earthquake, triggered a massive underwater slide off the coast of Newfoundland. That landslide snapped 12 undersea telegraph cables, generated a tsunami that killed 28 people in coastal Newfoundland. It happened entirely underwater. No one on the surface saw the slide itself. They just saw the wave arrive. What happens to a ship above an underwater landslide? Same answer as the methane scenario. The water column destabilizes, buoyancy fails, the vessel goes down fast and without warning. The landslide disperses and buries the wreckage. Nothing comes back up. This does not rescue Berlitz. Most of what he wrote was invented. But in this specific region, under specific geological conditions, ships can vanish in ways that leave no surface evidence and generate no distress calls. Not often, not reliably, but it happens, it has happened, and the mechanism is real. Berlitz said, there is a secret. Couchet said there is nothing. Geology says there is no secret, but there is more unknown than either of those two were willing to sit with. The honest answer to the question, what is really at the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle, is this: we do not fully know. Not because someone is hiding it, because we have not looked hard enough. Because a 50-year-old paperback made the question too embarrassing to take seriously. And somewhere down in the dark, in 8,000 meters of water that no submersible has visited in over a decade, something is sitting there waiting for us to get over ourselves and go look. If you made it this far, drop the word depth in the comments. Just that. I want to know how many of you are here for this kind of material, where we go underneath the famous version of the story and find out what is actually there. The next video is about a place with the same geological profile as the Bermuda Triangle. Same methane hydrates, same tectonic instability, same pattern of unexplained events. Nobody wrote a bestseller about it. There is no legend attached to it, which means nobody contaminated it. The science is clean. And what the science shows is, if anything, more interesting than anything in this video. Subscribe so you catch it when it drops, not as a favor to me, because if you watched this far, that next video is exactly what you're going to want to see.